because the title was too big. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Okay, I think you're good.
Hey, thank you, Colton. Well, welcome everybody. As most of you know, I'm Janelle Martin, the Education Compliance Officer for the Kansas Board of Nursing. And we are here today to talk about the new annual report that Kansas is doing in conjunction with NCSBN. This was something that the Board of Nursing looked at the December meeting. We'd been looking at it before, but approved in December to go ahead with the core data annual report that NCSBN has put together and add our own parts to that. And so it's been a great partnership and collaboration, I think, in coming to an annual report that will provide some additional types of things we haven't been able to do before with our annual report. And we're really hoping that that brings us to a better place. So I'd like to do introductions first. Most of you already know Adrian Guerrero, who's our Chief Operating Officer at KSBN. Colton, our excellent IT support person and all around good guy at the Kansas Board of Nursing. And then we also have with us today, Kiana McIntosh and Josephine Silvestri from NCSBN. They are key people we have been working with from the NCSBN side. Kiana has been phenomenal in getting all of our additional questions and things put into the survey. And Joe has been a great support and question answerer for me over the past few days as well, as we get ready to launch. And what the survey she'll do has a lot to do with they both will have a lot to do with the data that comes back. So we are really happy to have them with us for this and to help us answer questions as they might come up. And so that leads me to the next thing. If you do have questions, I'd like to try to kind of go through the orientation piece and talk through this. But if you have questions along the way, go ahead and put them in the Q&A panel, and not the chat, but the Q&A panel. And we will try to get those questions that we can answer along the way. Adrian will pop those in there. And if we need to, then when we get to the end, we'll answer some of those that may need to be answered live. We'll do that then at the end. So I think with that, Kiana, Joe, anything you'd like to add before we get started?
No, thanks for having us though.
Yes,
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Adrian, anything I forgot from our side? Okay, good to go. So I think with that, we'll move on. One of the reasons we wanted to do this, besides the fact that we've done orientations for you before, and we do have several new administrators, so I know that's important as well. But I think one thing to point out about this is, one of the things that's going to come out of this is the first ever national nursing database, education database. And I think the more boards of nursing that participate, we are one of 8 in a spring cohort. There were 11 in the first group. So they now have 19 boards of nursing that are on board for kind of the pilot year for this. And I think it's really great to be part of that. I know pilots sometimes are hard because they're the first time you do something, but I think being part of that is really good. We're able to give feedback. They're able to tell us things that we didn't know before. And in the end, we'll have more information. We'll be able to look at our own data on a more global and national perspective. And I think that will help us in Kansas in our programs as well. So I think this is just a really exciting time to be part of something like this, and really glad that Kansas and the board decided to go ahead with that. So I wanted to give a little bit of background just at the beginning to talk about how this kind of came to be. It was July of 2020 when NCSBN released some of the evidence-based nursing education approval guidelines. And those were the quality indicators, warning signs for boards of nursing, which we've talked about over the last year at some of the board meetings. And I think I have also sent out the information on those guidelines to all of the administrators as well. But those guidelines were based on 4 separate studies that were done. There was an integrative literature review that was done, a national Delphi study that was done, They also looked at an analysis of 5 years worth of data from 43 boards of nursing annual reports and another 31 boards of nursing and their site visit reports. And I'm happy to report that Kansas was part of both of those. We submitted to them data from Kansas for both of those, and we're part of that study that was done. Not all boards make site visits, so that's why there's a little bit smaller number participating in that. The annual report study was a more quantitative study, kind of really looking at numbers, students, faculty. The site visit report was really the qualitative study. It was basically the stories about the programs themselves. And as you know, annual reports can kind of do that. And site visit reports tell us a lot about what, excuse me, boards are looking for and what kinds of data come out of that. The National Delphi study had 295 experts in, excuse me.
Did you want to take over, Kiana or Josephine? Explain some of the history of it.
Hello. Hi there. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Joe. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure she's okay. But yeah, I can take over. So all of this, the annual report, the current annual report that we have, the core annual report, is based on 4 separate studies, essentially the literature review, the Delphi study, and also the 5-year annual reports that Janelle mentioned that Kansas was a participant of, and also the 5-year site visits as well, which were also obtained from the boards. So all of these contributed to this uniform database, essentially, and it was the initial database. And that's when we realized when we are looking into all of the data that we did not have a consistent set of variables across all states. And so that's why NCSBN sought to create a core set of consistent variables that we could use to gauge programs across all states and all programs. And so that's what we sought out to do for this annual report study that your board will currently be participating in. We have, as part of the current annual report, the core annual report, 52 core program questions, which includes questions on the program characteristics, faculty information, student information, and the curriculum information as well. And then also we have added, because of the pandemic, we added 16 additional COVID questions at the end of that. And we had decided to do this kind of last minute, right when we had distributed the first set back in the fall cohort. We thought that would be important to add those 16 COVID questions because we felt that it would affect the data that we would be getting, that this year's data or the 2020 year's data would be a little bit different from the year prior. So we sought to collect the COVID questions just to kind of give us a little perspective on what the previous year's data is and all data then moving forward. We do plan on collecting the COVID questions in the fall cohort with the 2021. I don't know that we'll continue to do the COVID questions after that, but currently there's a core set of the 52 questions in addition to the 16 COVID questions. And then there is the additional questions, and I'll wait for Janelle to, I'll have Janelle chime in if you're okay. Okay. She can discuss the additional questions a little bit more.
Okay, I am so sorry. I'm not sure what happened, but I hope to be able to continue here, and I do apologize.
I'm glad you're okay, Janelle.
I know something happened, and it
Yeah.
just sticking. So
Yeah.
thank you for jumping in there.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Colton, if you'll go ahead, I think we'll, I had just a couple more things in the background. I think this is one of the links I sent out to the administrators, but all of the information on the approval guidelines is in this July 2020 supplement of the Journal of Nursing Regulations. And I just wanted you to remind you of that. Next slide. I think we kind of already talked through the background, but the approval guidelines had to have this comprehensive group of folks. There had to be at least 2 of the 4 national studies that provided evidence for the guideline. And I think that was one of the things I want to point out that was really important about those guidelines, is that they are evidence-based. So as we're looking what's in our annual reports and the data that we asked for, much of that is correlated in these approval guidelines. It's going to happen again. I'm so sorry. In these approval guidelines as well, to show that there is evidence base for what we're looking at when we do those site visits. Go ahead to the next slide. I just think this is just a little bit more about what Joe was already talking about. This is going to be the first ever core nursing education database. I think there's only 52 questions, which they go very quickly. Many of them are yes, no, very easy to get to. Some are a little more in depth, but I think for the most part, it goes very quickly. Again, we talked about in the pilot year, they do have almost 20 boards participating. And I think maybe the important thing to emphasize here is the reason that participation is so important is when they were doing the studies, one of the things, and I think Joe mentioned this, was that consistency of data. This is really going to provide, those core data pieces are going to provide a consistent way of looking at data across the nation. And I think that's what's so important. When they were looking at it and trying to figure out what makes a difference in programs, having to look at all the different ways that boards ask questions, it does bring into more to light that the consistency is very important. So aggregate data will be able to be statistically analyzed. We can publicly report it. We'll be able to do comparisons. And I believe that the first actual aggregate analysis will be done this coming summer with the pilot groups that are involved right now. So
that's correct. Yeah, we will start analyzing that data in July.
Good. And I'm hoping Kansas will be in that, since we will be completing ours in the end of June. So that's very exciting as well. And I just think that, and Joe has already mentioned, I was going to add here about the COVID questions. It was really important. They were already started into the pilot year. They had just announced it when COVID kind of took over things. So this idea that we can also look at some of the responses to COVID and get some idea of what it was like across the nation and what responses were and kind of what happened, I think is also a very important thing. So those few additional questions are again, fairly easy to get through. A lot of them, yes, no, and then some ability to answer some more in-depth questions as you have responses for those. And then our board, the Kansas Board of Nursing, added an additional, I know it sounds like a lot, but there's an additional 40 questions, but many of those are based on like faculty. You know, we had to break those down into questions about full-time, part-time, and you're used to that from the reports we've done in the past. That's just a breakdown we have to have because of what our regulations require. So those additional questions were things that were not part of the core data, but that are part of our regulatory process. And so that's why those are there. So you will see them in that order: the core data, the COVID questions, and then the KSBN additional questions. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that process works as we get into the next piece. So Colton, if you'd go to the next slide. The survey itself, NCSBN will actually send the survey link to us at KSBN. And once we get that, I will be sending out the survey link to all the program administrators, just like we've done in the past when the other one is open. And additionally, we will be sending you 2 resources along with the survey link. One is a PDF copy of the survey itself. And another is a template resource that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but those things will be included in the email as well. Plus, you will also get contact information as part of that email. And we are planning to put this orientation PowerPoint with a resource page on it onto the website where the annual report information, you usually go for the online annual report, so that you have something also online that you can refer to if you need to. So once we send that out, we will also then provide NCSBN with a list of all of our programs, and they are going to help us in terms of reminding you when you get to about the halfway point. Our reports will still be due June 30th, as they always have been. That hasn't changed. And so Kiana will be helping remind programs who've not submitted by that halfway point. It's also important that they have that list so that, Colton, go ahead to the next slide if you would, please. That Kiana is going to be a key resource for us on this. Any questions about the core data or the COVID questions, she will be the key person and she will be the contact person for those questions. Her information is provided in the survey right up front in the introduction. We'll be showing you that. And we will also include it as part of our resource page. But she will be the go-to on those questions. And she and Joe are the ones who will be cleaning the data. So they might also need your contact information in case they come across something that just doesn't look quite right. Like average age of your students being 1 year of age probably isn't correct. So they would need to come back to you and ask some questions and work with you on how to get that corrected. So we will be working together on that as well. Anything that comes up in the additional questions, the KSBN ones, I will still be the primary resource for that. Adrian can also help out if needed to, but I think a lot of those questions can be directed toward me, at least initially. And if I need further help, I can also go to him as well. So I think in terms of that piece, it should be fairly well spelled out for you. Okay, next slide. So once you receive that, kind of the directions will be once you get into the survey, will be right up front. We need everybody to fill out a survey. And I'm going to go back here just a little bit, but a reminder that the annual report was actually developed for undergraduate programs. So I'm going to speak to graduate programs here in just a minute, but right now I'm going to speak just to the undergrad piece. So you need to fill out one for each NCLEX code that you have. Even if you're a bi-level program, if your level 1 has an NCLEX code and your level 2 has an NCLEX code, you need to fill out the survey for each one, just like you have with ours in the past. So if you only fill out one survey in the past, you will only fill out one survey with this as well. So all questions are required, and I will section the core data questions are required. The COVID they're being required as well as the KSBN ones. And the way that works is that you have to go from start to finish. So you can't progress because they are required. That's why we send the PDF for you. Some of you may want to look over the PDF, get answers in there, because there may be some of them you have to go other places to find them to make sure you have all the data you need when you sit down to enter it into the survey. Because as you progress, you'll want to answer each question as it comes. And if you get to a question you can't proceed past, the survey will actually save all of your data as you go along. And as long as you come back and use the same computer with the same browser, you don't want to clean. If you have a program that cleans all your cookies out at the end of the day, you don't want to use that computer, because if it does that, it will wipe out what you've put in there. So it's important to not do that during this process of doing completing the survey. But as long as you go back to that, then it's all saved there, and you can go back and then complete it as you need to, or you can come in and out of it as you need to. I think that was all I wanted to say about that. Okay, next slide. So I'm just going to show you here a few screenshots. This is what it will look like when it comes to you. It will have our logo on it. It will have an introduction. This is where you'll read through just about what I've just said too, in terms of needing to complete for each NCLEX code. And You will have until go to the next slide, Colton. I think that's kind of the rest of I couldn't get it all in one, but then the rest of the directions there, it shows you, I circled June 30th is drop dead, just like it always has been. And then Kiana's email is right there as well, right in the survey, right at the beginning. So it's a good resource for you to go to. Next slide. And so this is just a look at then once, and actually this was done before, it's not in the actual survey, but at the beginning of the survey looks just like this. This is what there are questions that will be filled out that you'll type in. A lot of them are just fill in either check mark or yes or no, or put a number in. So it's fairly, I think, easy to get through. Next slide. So once you get past, this is actually from the survey itself. So once you get past the core data questions and the COVID questions, you will see a section that says additional questions from the Board of Nursing. That's where our questions begin. And then you'll go from there to answer those questions. Next slide. There are some of the KSBN questions that will ask you for an attachment. And these are the questions where you would have before, you might have had these basically faculty, nursing courses, facilities, and preceptors were questions that required you to put in that data and information, specific data and information on those 4 things. Those are still going to be required. That's part of the regulation requirement that we have. But there's a couple ways you can do this. We made it that way because we know a lot of you already keep that information compiled somewhere in a database that you can pull out a report. If you have something like that and you have that information already in a document, all you have to do is, so here in question 8, it's asking about agencies. In 9, it's asking you to upload that template or whatever that file is. If you already have a document, you can just upload it there on that number 9. If you need something or want something, we've provided very simple templates, and they are actually provided within the survey itself. So there you can see on number 8, it says clinical agency information, and it's an Excel document. So you would just click on that. It would pull up the template for you. You could fill out that template and then save that document, and then you can attach that document here. I will also send those templates in the email as a separate resource link as well, in case you feel more comfortable doing that ahead of time. So those resources will be provided in a couple ways, but they are also right here if you want to use them. But again, it's not required to use the template we've provided. It's just a way to do it if you don't have something else and you want to be sure you have what you need. So I think those are the important things on that one. Next slide. I'm going to switch gears a minute to the graduate section. So if you're a school that has both an undergrad and a graduate program, you will have one survey. Because graduate programs don't have NCLEX codes, they don't fill out the core data. That is only undergraduate. So once you've completed all of the undergraduate information, it will ask the question, do you have a graduate program? And if it's yes, it will take you to the graduate survey. And again, there's not quite as many. There's not quite the 40, I think, for the graduate. But then the graduate program person, sometimes it's the same administrator, sometimes it's a different person, but can then go ahead and complete out the graduate section. I think I already, if a school has more, I think we only have one school that has two different graduate programs that are going to be done separately. So I think we've already taken care of that. I think most folks just have to go to the graduate section if they have it. If you do not have a graduate program, you just have to click on the no, and it will then take you to the end of the survey and you're done. So I just wanted you to be aware it's there. You're going to need to answer yes or no. And then once you do that, for those that's all I'm going to say about the graduate, because it's pretty simple from there. Fill it out. It also has the ones places for templates to be uploaded, same way that the undergrad does. Next slide. So if you get to that point and it's all done, you're at the end and it's time to submit. After the last question, there's a place that you'll have that will give you a summary of your responses. At that point, you can download your report and keep it. And I should say you should download your report and keep it before you submit it, so that any questions come up and Kiana or Joe have to get in touch with you, you have your report, you know what you've put in there, and you can look at that together. And then once you've got everything, you've got it downloaded, then it will take you to a place where it will show you your progression at 100%. There's an arrow on the left and the right. You click the right arrow and it submits it for you. So go ahead, and I have, I think, screenshots of that as well. So when it takes you to the end of the survey, it tells you right here, please download the PDF. It has the link for you to do that. And then once you do that, you go to the bottom of the page, and this is what it looks like, your survey completion. Once you get to the blue arrow on the right and click that, it's submitted and it goes to NCSBN. So, and then you're done. So you have a copy of it. They have the submission, and then they will work at it from there. It just doesn't say submit, but it does give you the directions on what to click, and that it's the right arrow that will be your submission. Okay, sorry, Colton, go ahead. So we hope that when we look at all this, you'll see this as a win-win and really on board with us in terms of what this can do for us in terms of the support we're getting from NCSBN and being part of this effort for a national nursing education database. And also it helps us out a lot by really getting those responses into a format that we hope will be a little easier for analysis and data gathering. They will give us not only an aggregate report for Kansas for all of your responses on the core data, but then they will also give us all the data from our own questions, and we can do what we need to do for our regulatory process from there. So really exciting to be part of this. And I think that this will be good for Kansas. So with that said, I think we are ready for questions that might be out there. And Adrian, if I don't know what's come up as we've gone along, but we would certainly take any questions if anybody has them in the Q&A box if you haven't already been there. And we will do what we can to get those answered. Joe, Kiana, did I miss anything?
Just to remind the programs about the automatic save within the survey tool, there is no visible save button, as well as the submit button. You'll use that blue arrow, as Janelle mentioned before, after you get to the survey response page. So as you progress onward within the survey, your survey responses will be automatically saved. And in the event that you do use a computer that they cleared the cookies, I can still retrieve your report. So all hope is not lost. You don't have to start over. So I can send you a PDF of your currently pre-populated responses as well. So at this point, I think that's all I have.
I forgot about that part, Kiana. I think that
no,
is
I didn't want to
important.
interrupt you.
That's okay. I kind of got on a roll there, and but it is good to know that automatic save. There's no visible, like she said, no visible button, but it will be there for you as long as you come back to that. And it is, you're right. It's good to know. You might have to re-enter it, but Kiana can get to what you've already put in there, just in case that becomes important for you. So we want to make, I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to put that in there.
And then one more thing, we do encourage you to use the PDF template of the survey, as it'll be easier to just have all of your data compiled in one document and then just enter it electronically. Although you can still enter the survey as many times as you need, we just found that it's been easier to use the PDF first.
Right. And that also helps, I think, for the programs that have more than one person. If you have faculty helping to complete and gather data, or depending on different parts, it helps you get all those parts together, and you can look over first and make notes in it if you need to. And I think that's helpful about the PDF as well. So we will be providing that to you at the same time that we provide the link for the survey. So you don't have to get into the survey until you're ready. But the PDF will be there, as well as the templates and contact information. So hopefully that provides you what you need. And as always, we know this is a first time, so don't be afraid to ask questions if you need to. And we will do the best we can to support you through the process.
We don't have any current questions on there. I think I would just highlight that I put the contact us in the chat section, and Janelle sent that out. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll send it to Kiana and Jacqueline as needed. And then we're also working on a little section on the website to have some of this kind of content and information and links to the system. We'll have that hopefully here shortly.
Thanks.
I thought one question that we did have last time that I thought might be applicable to this group was, will the ADN and PN surveys be separate or together now?
Yeah, and that's where I emphasize, because the PN programs and ADN programs have different NCLEX codes, they will have to continue to be done separately. That data is gathered for each code. And so that's how that data is analyzed. So it will continue to be a separate report for both PN and ADN. So if you have an NCLEX code for it, fill it out separately for that code. And I think if we don't have any questions, again, I know sometimes questions come up after you see it or after you think about it a little bit, but we're just hoping this provides you at least a little guidance as you get started. And one thing I hadn't really talked, we are trying to finalize the survey. I think we're really, really close. So I think we are very close to getting that sent out, hoping maybe next week. I haven't really talked to Kiana and Joe about this, but I think that, we've already looked it over, and we're pretty close to having that as a final ready to go. And I know, because some of you had requested to maybe start a little earlier. I know May gets really, really busy, but I think we've done really well to get it all going, and we really appreciate NCSBN as they've helped us really try to fast track this so we could get it done this year. So I guess I would say with that, we've recorded the orientation session. So if you have someone else who would like to hear it or go back to it, it will be available. We will put that on the resource page as well, that YouTube link for you. And so it will be there as a resource, because we did have a couple folks who did say at a time they were not going to be able to make it to this presentation. So we wanted to make sure they had a resource, and so this has provided a good way to do that. So I guess I'm still not saying anything. So I'm just going to see that as a sign that I think we're probably done. I want to thank our NCSBN folks again for being with us to do this and to continue to support us through this. And we will just go from there. And again, to our administrators, thank you so much for all that you do. And as you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask us as we go along. I think with that, we are going to let you go into the rest of your day.
Thank you, Janelle.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.